Hey there. So, just now we were talking about empathy. So, now from empathy, we're going to move into define. So, what happens in define? So, define is really about you trying to make sense of whatever that you have heard on all the data in empathy. So, let me tell you this in a brief overview. This is basically what happens in define. Now, when it comes to define, you need to what happens here is this. All the data from empathy, all this information, you're going to put together into categorize them, and it provides insights. Basically, you're going to put all this information, and you're going to interpret this information as forms of insights. Like, you're going to have to acquire more insight into them. Basically, some of those things, some of the data, maybe you want to find out more, maybe you want to investigate more, what's happening more into those areas. So basically, you're going to deep dive. You're going to dive deeper into it and find out a lot more about what are those possible problems. So illustratively, this is basically what happens. Now, the empathy has all this user data, and all this user data is funneled, funneled, right? They're all funneled by the next process called define. So to define it, you're basically trying to identify one or two main problems and creating a problem statement. Now, the way to do that is to understand the user's narrative. The user's narrative is what kind of stories the user is saying to you. What kind of explanation. Basically, when you talk to them some more, you say, "Tell me more about this. Tell me more about why is it so important for you for this to be done, and why is it so important? Why is it so meaningful?" Why do you feel that way when blah 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 blah. So you just talk to the person, let the person tell you, or observe the person far much more, and talk to people who are related to that person. Maybe get it from different perspectives, things like that. So these are some of the things, ways to define the problem a bit more. It's like making more sense to it, giving more sense to it, trying to find more details, more narratives. So then what happens here? From all the data that you have from empathy, it narrows down, to a main problem statement. Now, a problem statement consists of the user, basically the user, and the user's needs. There's a highlight of the need. So basically, define highlights the need more. What does the user how huge is this need? Why is it so important? How important is it? Now, and then combine it with the insight, which is comprised of the narrative, the story, or the description. Then this whole thing will become a problem statement. So a problem statement will give you opportunities. Is best thing to do to get started with the next phase called ideate. So let's recap. User data here narrows down, identifying needs and problems, and then coming up with the problem statement. But what define does is the define tries to use a process called identifying narratives and trying to for the purpose of finding specific problems. So what define does is it creates this funnel, so it narrows down everything to a singular problem statement. You could have one or two problem statements, that's fine. So how a problem statement is written. So basically, the user needs to, this is basically under the category of needs to something with the idea or with the solution, because you know, then because it can be used in certain way, or it can be created in certain way, or whatever, how the idea is being utilized or applied, it can be applied for this effectively or something, for or so the so everything else will be affected, environment or whatever. So there, so basically here there's a reason for the idea, because there's a reason for the idea, and then you have the effects of the idea to other people or to the person, for himself or herself, and so on and so forth. So this is how a problem statement can be written. So the user needs to do that. Then from the problem statement, you start to produce ideas. So the problem statement, it means producing solutions basically. So then you start to do some ideation work. Now the ideation work is just really visual, okay, but let me give you an overview what exactly happens here. You have all these different ideas. Now the technique to do this is, say, more of a mind map version. Okay, now all this will be explained more in detail during tutorials. So you have all these different ideas. You can have different sets of ideas, 1 or 2 ideas. Now the ideas have to get ideas, you need to brainstorm, and of course you can brainstorm, you create maps and diagrams during brainstorm, so it's easy for you to you know, illustrate it. So then you have all these ideas, again you funnel it down, okay, to the next, say you shortlist 2 or 3 best ideas, then you have one main idea. So as an overview, this is what happens in the entire design thinking process for until the ideation part. Now here, from the problem statement, okay, you ideate to produce solutions, to propose solutions, okay. Then you engage in brainstorm process. Now during the brainstorm process, you suspend judgment. That means do not judge your ideas. It can be as many ideas as possible, all right, but don't judge them, don't evaluate it just yet. Once you have enough ideas, but put a limitation when it comes to brainstorm. Maybe you can put a 5-minute limit or 10-minute limit to get as many ideas as possible. Then stop at 10 minutes. Don't go anymore. Okay. So look at how many ideas you got. Then once you stop the brainstorm process, the session, then when you stop coming up with ideas, that's when you start to shortlist the idea. So when shortlisting the idea, you have the assessment, and you have to assess and evaluate those ideas. That's when you frame questions like about the ideas. Why is it relevant? How is this connected to this? How does this solve this problem? And so on and so forth. It can be the range of questions. So frame your questions to eliminate the one ideas which is not relevant. Now remember, during the brainstorm side, all the ideas that you come up with can be as exaggerated as you want. It again, suspend judgment during brainstorming session. So then after you have come up with the best idea, say you've identified 1 or 2 best ideas, then work with prototyping. So when you're working with prototyping, for example, let's just let me show you a previous visual I'd done before. Let's say, okay, let's say you already shortlisted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas. Then after you reevaluate the shortlisted 5 ideas, then you picked one main idea, and then with this one main idea, you begin the process of prototyping. But just before you construct it in a 3-dimensional form, you can do a very detailed drawing of the solution. So this is a detailed drawing. It must be as detailed as you can. Okay, a detailed drawing of the solution. So usually you do that for the final idea, right? So then so going back to, let's say, So after you've had the detailed drawing, you can create a mock-up. Now, let's just say your idea is to create an app or your idea is to create a spaceship, or I don't know what your idea is, but it doesn't mean you got to really do it. You just create mock-ups. If it's an app, then you're going to have to maybe have illustrations of how the app interface looks like, or for example, if it's a cup, then you can create a 3D version of a cup, like with a paper mache or cardboard or something. So you can use recyclable materials just to create mock-ups. Okay, it's not the real thing, but it's a pretend thing, but it represents the kind of solution that you have. If it's a service industry or something that's not tangible, a solution that you don't really touch and feel, then it could be a video clip or something. So you can use video clips, you can use illustrations, okay, digital drawing, 3D objects, but all of this must be accompanied with write-ups. Okay, write about 1 paragraph about it, and so on and so forth. Now there will be samples I can show you during tutorials, so don't worry, that will be done. Now apart from that, after that, present your solutions and test your solutions with your user, the person that you're designing it for, and get feedback. Now this is very, very important. Okay, now the feedback allows you to be able to go back and forth, because the entire design thinking process is a cyclical process. Okay, everything is related, everything is connected, and you can go back and forth between the process. If something's not right in the prototype, you go back to ideate. If something is not right in the ideate, you go back to define. If the define problem statement maybe wasn't so accurate, then maybe you go back to empathy and identify additional data or get additional data, go back to define again, try to make sense of that data, have new problem statements, and then based on those problem statements, ideate over here, and then go here, and so on. So it's a cyclical process. Okay, so it's a very good flexible process that develops your idea to and creates a very, very firm a good as accurate solution as possible. So that's basically the overview of the design thinking process, right? So more details will be described to you, more examples will be described to you during the tutorials, because we're going to go live in the tutorials. So I hope that I'll be able to show you more things then. Can show you past works and some examples and so on and so forth. So I hope this gives you a little concise view about the design thinking, and I hope it gives you a little bit of basics, a little bit. But honestly, you will never know until you do it. But I suggest we get started with your first assignment. So the next video will be a video about the first assignment. So till then, live long and prosper. Take care.